Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Monetize Your Message. I'm Marie Parks, and this is my business partner, Jesse Honard, and we are the co-owners of North Star Messaging and Strategy. And this show is all about helping you figure out ways that you can leverage your own message to find success in your business. And one of the ways that we do that is by bringing on some awesome guest experts, and we're really excited to have Ardelia Lee here today. She is a story and content strategist, so you can guess that her work is really close to our heart, and we totally love what she does. Not to mention her geeky, nerdy side, which we also totally have, and we're loud and proud, so I think we're going to have a lot of fun to talk about today. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I just want to start with your story. So how did you become the story and content strategist?
So I actually started out as a copywriter. And I did that because I had graduated from college with my MA, and I had a 9-month-old at the time. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I were moving across the country. We moved from Houston to Detroit. So it's like I just graduated. We were moving in a few months. I had a baby to take care of. Getting a job did not make sense for me. So I kind of stumbled into the online business thing as a copywriter, and I'd worked as a copywriter for a while.
So when did that happen?
We moved from Houston to Detroit in, I know this one, September 2014.
You know, there'd be a quiz. Sorry, go ahead.
September 2014. That's when we moved up here, and that's when I started my copywriting business.
Oh my gosh. So we were all in Houston at the same time. I left Houston in November of that same year. And after living there for 10 years, and Jesse moved away in 2015.
Wow.
So is that right?
Yeah. October 2015. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you go to college did you go to college in Houston too?
Sam Houston up in Huntsville.
What a small world. I didn't realize that about you. Like, I knew that we had a lot in common, but this is extra fun. Cool. So, that was a lot on your plate at the time.
Yes, it was.
So you were like, yeah, I'll start a business, which a lot of people, like, to them, that seems like the ultimate terrifying thing to do. But you fully embraced it. So was it because of the lifestyle and the freedom and all of that you were looking for?
It was. My primary concern at the time was to be able to stay home and take care of my daughter. You know, we just moved to a new place. We knew no one. I had no recommendations for daycares. I didn't have a babysitter. And, you know, my husband was off working already because he had a job over the summer up here. And so it was just my daughter and I at home. And I was like, we had no money. When we closed on our house, we had no money. And it's like, I couldn't put her in daycare. We couldn't afford it. Right. So starting the business was the easiest way to stay home with my daughter and to start bringing in some money.
So what has that journey looked like from starting just kind of like, I have to start something and landing on copywriting to where you are now?
Right. So copywriting was actually kind of like the no-brainer choice for me because I've got a BA and an MA in English, so I can write. I mean, that's not a problem. So copywriting was like the natural choice for what I was going to do as a business. And I did that for about 2 years, I guess. And a few months ago, I kind of realized that copywriting was not what I really wanted to be doing for forever. And that what I thought was actually a love of writing was more a love of stories. And I loved writing stories. So when I realized that I was more in love with stories than I was writing, I began to shift my business away from copywriting and more to helping people find their stories.
Awesome. I love that. So how has that, so I guess you're kind of pivoting now, although it's probably a gentle pivot, right? Because a lot of it does flow. But how have you navigated that with your audience and your existing clients? And because I feel like pivots are a moment for potential messaging pitfalls.
Yes, and I've probably had some of those, quite honestly. Some days it feels like I've had a string of false starts, like I'm going to do this, and no, wait, I'm going to do this, and no, not that, I'm going to do this. And then other days it's just kind of like everything is flowing. And even if I have had false starts, it's kind of prepared me for this. So I try to be really open with my audience to let them know what's going on. I try to point out what I haven't done really well and what I could have done better, so that when they're in the same boat, they can navigate it a little better than I have.
That's awesome. I love that sort of self-awareness that you're bringing to the process, like, as you're in it, because I think a lot of times, I know with our own pivot, which was a year ago now, it was a lot of hindsight, looking back and being like, okay, after the fact, once the dust has kind of settled, how would we have done this different? So it's really cool that you're kind of like taking yourself in a very aware way through that process.
Yes, I think I've grown more self-aware the longer I've been in business. And that has been a really good thing, actually, because it's allowed me to make really important mindset shifts, and it's allowed me to grow my self-confidence.
Yeah, that is part of this whole entrepreneurial journey that I think we discounted until we started kind of sticking our toe in it and realizing like, oh, that's essentially what's been missing. I mean, obviously, like, you know, we can work on our strategy all day long, and as entrepreneurs, there's always more opportunity or connection or whatever. But like, man, that internal work is huge. And I've said this before in you know, other conversations, but I really believe like there's been nothing more demanding of personal development and personal growth than this whole entrepreneurial journey, especially the last couple of years. So it sounds like you're experiencing that too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I remember thinking when I first started, like, who would hire a confidence and mindset coach? That sounds so weird. And then I realized that I was the one who needed to hire a confidence and mindset coach.
Yep, I had the exact same thoughts. And now I'm like, where are they? I want them all in my life forever. Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I super love about your brand, and I'm sure it's going to stay true to it no matter what you end up doing in terms of, you know, any future pivots or however this pivot shakes out, but you've always been really yourself with your audience. And Jesse and I love to talk about actually the way we met. Let's see if you know this one. The way that we met is on a not like adult forum, but like a forum for adults about the children's book series Animorphs. I'm doing this flushing now. Do you remember Animorphs? I don't know if you know that one.
Is that the books where they had the pictures where the kids would morph into the animal on the cover?
Yes. I have a full collection here. Jesse has a full collection.
Right there.
So like we fully embrace our sci-fi geekdom and all of that. So how did that feel for you? Like, is that just like a no-brainer from the very beginning to just like embrace all parts of yourself? And I can see too, like, for love of stories, I mean, that's like the most amazing part about, you know, Star Trek or whatever it is, like, is the stories and the characters and like the emotion and all of that. That's like super huge for what you do. But yeah, how was that process of like, yes, I'm totally going to embrace this as part of my message? Because I think a lot of people are scared to show just their personal interests.
Right. And that actually happened over the summer. I was working with my business mentor, and she said, you know, your personality is not anywhere in your business or your content. And she's like, and it's so amazing, it needs to be in there. And I was like, oh, okay. And so first of all, I had to like get over the, do I really have a cool personality kind of thing? And, then I started thinking about, well, what do I love? And I love, you know, nerdy, geeky things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And so yes. I put it into my content, and it just felt really natural. Like, I have a Star Wars and Star Trek reference for everything. So why not?
I know. I love your web copy. Like, I crush on it so hard. So yeah, have you found that like when you're chatting with somebody on a discovery call, or, you know, you're first chatting with someone, do they talk about that? Do they're like, oh man, I knew you were for me when.
I actually had a potential client reach out to me because of the Star Wars post that I posted in a Facebook group. She's like, I love Star Wars too. It's like, cool.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
I feel like I feel like so often this, and maybe you've run into something similar, but so often, we talk about being true to our personalities and talking about our hobbies and talking about these, things like Star Wars and Star Trek that we like love, but then people kind of get afraid to say it. So then when one person kind of sticks their head up out of the ground and is like, hey, I'm actually like, I grew up on Voyager and I love it. And everyone's like, oh my God, me too. Someone said it first. So now we can all chime in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've noticed that's exactly what happens with storytelling too. Like when I tell part of my story in a Facebook group, I'll have other people chime in and tell their stories. And that's the thing, is people want to tell their stories and they want to share their non-business interest, but it's kind of scary to do that and be the first one to do it.
Yeah. So kudos for being brave. In fact, I think that's how we met, is I saw something that you posted and I was like, yes, I am in that fandom. Let's be friends, please. So we've chatted about your message and your business, but I'd also love to just dig into like some of the wisdom that you can provide for our audience. So can you talk a little bit about what you mean by story strategy and content strategy? What does that look like for your clients?
So when I say story strategy, I mean using your story in such a way that you get the most mileage out of it. So that's like you connect more with your clients, or if you're using it like on your sales page or in your sales content, you can book more potential clients. So we're not just telling stories, we're telling them in such a way that they really help you further your business and meet your goals.
I love that. And for people, I know that one of the struggles I've heard a lot is that people do feel a little nervous about being the first person to come out and share their story, especially sometimes if it's just a silly reason, like it's something particularly nerdy that they don't feel like sharing because they're worried people will judge them or something, or it could be something that's very vulnerable and they're a little scared on that part. So what kind of advice do you have for people who are kind of in that boat where they know they have a story to tell and they know they can strategically align it with their business, but they're a little hesitant?
Yes, I would. Let me think about this. Okay. So I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are scared of like sharing stories of failure, and I'm that same way too. When I first started kind of sharing my story, there were parts of my shift and my pivot that didn't go as planned. And, I've changed everything so much that I kind of felt like a failure. It's like, oh my gosh. But the thing is, even if you have, a failure or a problem or an obstacle that you're overcoming, share that story, because even if you have failed, that doesn't mean you are a failure. So in some aspects, it's separating like your story from yourself, which sounds really weird, but kind of to get that slightly objective view that you need to tell your story. Because if it's really personal, it can be really hard to share your story, especially if it's really vulnerable like that.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I like the way that you put that. And I think that, we have to remember that when we're sharing something that sounds like a failing, the fact that A, we recognize it as a failing, and B, we like walked away from that learning something. Mm-hmm. I mean, that means that we've grown since then. And like, maybe it was kind of a low point, but like the fact that it's worthy of a story means that it meant something to us and it changed how we do something in our business or how we think about other people or how we operate in some form or fashion. So I think that's important to remember that like, it's not about the low moment. It's about like the redemption from it, or like the climb uphill from that low moment. That's the point. So that's good.
I love that. And so I'm kind of curious. I'm stuck on the nerdy thing because it just makes me happy. But I'm kind of curious. Are there any particular, when you work with your clients on telling their stories or even on telling your own story, writing your web copy or writing content within your business, are there any like fandoms or areas where that have particularly inspired you and why?
Oh, I love that's a good question. I guess I love Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, because they both have, the stories themselves both have the same kind of overarching theme, which is, like victory in the face of almost certain defeat. It's determined people overcoming obstacles that are thrown at them time and time again. And they are persevering, they're not giving up. And in the end, they succeed. And I think the people inside those fandoms really understand that and they internalize it. And that is just awesome.
I love that.
That's beautiful. I think of that sometimes about how, like, you know, we're on this quest, you know, as entrepreneurs, and it's not because, I mean, both of those cases, right? Like Harry Potter is just a kid. Frodo's just a hobbit. Like neither one of them are like big fancy warriors who've been trained since birth, you know, to wield the whatever, you know, like they, like Harry Potter and Frodo both didn't even know that they were like important in terms of things until pretty late in their lives into the story, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, like it's not a matter of like, oh, you've got the gene, or like you've been trained to own this business forever. Like maybe some of us have, maybe some of us come from entrepreneurial families, or like we're stepping into like the family business. But I think a lot of people, it's like you said, right? It was just like your life situation. It made sense for you. Or like for me, you know, I was leaving Houston around the same time you were, and it just like made sense for me to go full time with the business, for Jessie to go full time when she moved away from Houston and again didn't have a job lined up where she was going. So, and then it's just a matter of like, do you persevere? Do you stick with it? And like it's gonna suck. There are times when like you're gonna fall flat on your face, like done it, right? And so it's just a matter of like tapping into that inner like determined Harry Potter and just like keep on marching. So, but I think another thing that's really beautiful about both of those analogies that you made is that both of those stories, the hero only makes it to the end and is successful because he's supported along the way by other people. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and like what role others have played in your business, or what you see for your clients?
Definitely. So I actually did not have any kind of support for the first like year and a half of my business. I didn't really know Facebook groups existed, and I was on like Elance and Upwork and writing for content mills, and it was awful. And then I found Facebook groups and I started to connect with people and talk to them. And I found this one woman who's now my business mentor. I'm part of her mastermind, and she and I chatted on Facebook Messenger for like a year. And she really helped me and gave me perspective. And she was actually the catalyst for this whole me beginning to really take my business seriously and to actually hire a business coach. So I hired a business coach at the beginning of this year, and we worked together, and now I'm in a mastermind. So I've had the business coach support, and then I've had the mastermind support, and just being able to get feedback from other people and to have a voice of reason, be like, do you really want to do that? Are you sure? It's been really nice.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting. It's another way that our journeys kind of parallel yours, where we definitely kind of lived on our own little business island for a while. We didn't know about Facebook groups. We were, running the content mill circuit for a while, or working strictly with like big organizations and corporations who had a need for us and were definitely very good, viable clients. But they didn't provide a community aspect because we were just another cog in that machine, and they had tons of other stuff to worry about. So there was no community building there. So, and when we did step out and start creating community with other entrepreneurs, it was like everything changed. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been so crucial to our growth. And you're not the first person we've talked to who has mentioned that being crucial to their own too, and just being like, there are other people here.
Yeah. Yes, I think that discovering Facebook groups was huge because I could ask and answer questions, and that just completely changed the game for me. I was like, there are other people out there doing this too? Really? Mm-hmm. And that was amazing.
Yeah. So let's talk about Facebook groups a little bit, because kind of a hot topic lately. A lot of them are closing. People are talking about how there's not as much engagement, but we and you run Facebook groups. So can you talk a little bit about, your decision to start the group, to continue the group, and what it provides for the people within it?
So I started my group, I think in August is when I started it. So it's still fairly new. And I started it because I really wanted to create a place for entrepreneurs to come and hang out. And I started it before this pivot to storytelling. So now it's a place for entrepreneurs to come and just share their stories and get help kind of perfecting how they use their stories and their content in their business. And I also wanted to start a Facebook group because I'm a leader. My stepdad used to get so angry with me to be like, "You're trying to lead this family. Stop it." And so I'm a leader and I wanted to lead. So I created a Facebook group so I could do that. And I've seen engagement go up and down. It really depends on how active I am in the group. So I have made it a point to be in there and be engaged and do lives and post extra things in addition to the scheduled prompts and tips and whatnot. But I really love my Facebook group. The people in it are amazing and we have some awesome conversations.
And that group is the Business Cafe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and we'll definitely post a link to that in the show notes. Yeah, August, that's an interesting time to start it too, because that's like right around when all these groups started to start closing their doors. And I don't know, in some ways it's kind of a really smart move because all these other shops are closing down and you're like sticking your sign in the ground and being like, well, I'm open here. And if you have a story to share, come on in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was actually kind of fortuitous that everybody started closing. I didn't plan it that way. It kind of happened.
Yeah, Jesse and I have been talking about it, and we have a prediction that those groups that sort of weather the storm and stay engaged and really do have that commitment from their leaders, you're right. I think that's key because you can't just start a group and then just expect other people to just pick it up and run with it. Like they have no tie to it. They have no reason to post in there unless, the leader is, right?
Yeah.
And I think those are the groups that are going to emerge really strong at the end of this shift in what Facebook groups mean to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if it's like outside of our community too, right? Like, everyone we talk to, it feels like we're all in sort of some portion of this bubble that we found, but like, I wonder if there's other bubbles out there, and if they're experiencing the same trends and how they're dealing with it. But it definitely seems to be true for our connections and what's visible to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to circle around back a little bit to storytelling and the impact that storytelling can have on your business, because the show is about monetizing your message and how you can use your message to create a viable business and make money off of it. And so I kind of feel like the shift from copywriter to story and content strategist is kind of a really poignant way to look at copywriting versus story and content strategy as a way to make money in your business. So when you look at your client's message and you look at your client's stories, how do you help them to leverage their stories so that they can use them not just to express themselves, but also to make money in their business?
So one of the things I do when I work with my clients is we look at their clients. So we look at their dream clients, their personas or their profiles or whatever it is they have, and we create a really detailed profile. And from that dream client profile, we create an actual story for that dream client. So kind of like a life story. We cover their goals, their struggles, their motivations. And those three key things are what helps me help my clients find the stories that connects with their dream clients. So we are looking for my client stories, but we're also looking for those stories that would resonate most with their clients, because it's that connection that really will drive the sales. Because if people understand that you've been where they've been and you get it, you have a solution to their problem because you've been there, they'll be much more likely to work with you and to buy from you.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're absolutely spot on. And too, I think that makes that vulnerability piece a little easier, right? Because it's like, you can't express, hey, I've been where you've been, unless you do get a little vulnerable and you do show that like, hey, I've struggled with this and now I help you with it because I figured it out and, it wasn't easy. And so I'd rather like, instead of you having to follow my zigzag path, like, let's just do this, So yeah, it's really important, I think, to be able to get vulnerable in that moment so that you can really show that it's possible to get out of the pain or the mire, the muck, whatever it is that, you know, they're experiencing.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, it's good. So in terms of like digging into that client profile or dream client story or whatever it is, how do you help them come up with that? Do they look at like what are the specific steps? Do you help them look at like past clients that they've really liked working with? Is it like an audience research method? Like what works best for your clients that you found?
I really do a conglomeration of things. So we do the standard, like age, gender, the socioeconomic stuff. And then we look at their past clients and we kind of, you know, mix everything together to create a solid dream client profile. So it's not like, you know, a unicorn client that looks good on paper, but doesn't actually exist.
Right.
And from there, we kind of draw logical conclusions and then we flesh them out with a story. So like if you work with mompreneurs, then a logical conclusion is your mompreneurs aren't going to have a lot of time. Well, why don't they have a lot of time? And then, you know, just create a story about their day and why they don't have a lot of time and all that good stuff.
I love that particularly because it helps to bring them to life. And I mean, we've all seen those like ideal client worksheets where it's like, just fill in the blanks with all of this data that a lot of times does, like you said, create this kind of non-existent unicorn client. And then you're constantly searching for someone who doesn't check who checks all the boxes and you never find them, which is super frustrating. But when you tell a story around that person you're looking for, it goes so much further towards getting into their head and making them feel like a real person, but also a flexible person. You know, it doesn't have to fit the story exactly, but you know, just, I love that you're giving them that resource.
Yes. I like viewing dream clients as kind of characters in stories. And when I was a kid, I used to do creative writing. So I would create these super complex character profiles. And that's pretty much what I do when I help my clients create stories for their dream clients, is just kind of view them as a character. And that brings them to life and fleshes them out.
Oh man, I love that for so many reasons. I'll just pick one though. It's so clear that like, you were born to do this, that like you're following your passion. And that's like super key, right? For developing a business that like keeps you excited, actually makes you want to like go invest like the time and the money and the resources in something like a business coach and a community and like developing all those relationships, all those things that we've been talking about, much less like the business strategy. I mean, it's beautiful, like what you've created. And I love your new pivot, because I think that what you just said is like further proof that like you're like destined for this.
Oh, thank you. If I could bring anything back to stories, I will.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, they're just so powerful, right? Like our brains are wired for them. And there's a reason why they're so effective at like conversions, at, you know, gaining new audience members, whatever it is. So I guess I have one other question about what you do now and how that ties in with all of this. So you also talked about content strategy. So how do you tie your content strategy for your clients together with the story once they've figured out that story and kind of fleshed it out?
So what we'll do is we'll create a content strategy, and instead of doing like 7 business tools I love, we're not going to do that surface level content. We're going to do things like 5 ways I failed my launch, or 5 ways I had a failed launch, or X things you can avoid, you know, having a failed launch. And then in each of those points, use a bit of their failed launch story. You know, so like, don't just send your email list 2 emails and then have them tell the story about, you know, I did this and this is what happened. Don't do that. And here's how you cannot do that. So, you know, just getting into deeper content and pulling out mistakes and stories like that to help other people learn.
I love that. That's, I think, so crucial. And it kind of ties back to something you talked about earlier, which is that we don't always feel comfortable talking about our failures, but they can be such great examples as we are sharing those teaching pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not to mention like those titles that you just made up for probably not true pieces. I'm like, I want to click that and read it. Like, it's true though. Like it really does make you want to know, like when you know there's going to be a story in there, you're like, okay, these aren't just like random tips. This is like based on real case studies, maybe from their own business. And that is so much more valuable than just like random one-off tips. So I love that you're building that in. I mean, it really strengthens every aspect of your clients' businesses, I'm sure.
It does. And for my own business, my most popular blog post, hands down, is 11 mistakes new bloggers make. And in each mistake is a mistake I made when I was first starting out. And I tell the story. And that is my most pinned post. It's my most commented post, and it gets the most views. And it's because I have my story all throughout there.
Yeah. I think there's also some sort of like, I don't know, people like to see how other people have messed up and then like be like, oh yeah, me too. I totally did that thing too. And now I know better. But you know, they like to kind of commiserate and be like, have I made those mistakes? First of all, like, and I don't know it. Or if I do know it, is there someone that I can like talk to and have that conversation with so I don't feel like I'm the only person who made that mistake?
Yes.
Which goes back to, right, like that need for community in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's beautiful that it all ties together. So, yeah, I think that was the bulk of my questions. Jesse, was there anything else that was coming up for you?
No, I just want to talk about Harry Potter all day.
I know. We'll have to have like a part 2 episode. Yes. Where we dig in. But yeah, anything else that, any other tips or wisdom that you want to share with our audience before we dig into where they can get in touch with you?
I would just say whenever you share your story, make sure there is a clear takeaway for your audience. You can even do like a how this applies to your life or why I'm telling you this little blurb at the bottom, but just make sure it's ultra clear your audience knows why you're sharing that story and how it affects their life.
Oh, I love so that. Good.
And
perfect thing to end on, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ardelia. So if people want to join your Facebook group, if they want to find you on your website, where's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can find me at my website. It's www.ardelialee.com. And really, any other way you want to connect with me can be through there. I have the Business Cafe Facebook group, and I'm on Instagram, and all those links are on my website.
Perfect. And we'll link to that in the show notes so that everyone can get to them real easily.
Exactly. And if there are people listening who are interested in digging into those stories and leveraging them, strategically within their content, what kind of services do you provide? Is it mostly like one-on-one? Do you have group programs? What does that mostly look like?
So right now I have a Stories That Sell intensive, and that's where we find your stories. We talk about how to use each story specifically in your content, and then we create a 3-month content strategy. And that's at ardelialee.com/intensive. And I also have a mastermind that I will be launching in November. So I don't have the link for that yet, but it will be launching in November. TBD.
We'll add it to the show notes once it is. So we'll stay in touch. That's exciting. So cool. Well, thank you again so much. And let's do this again and geek out for sure.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.